All right, everyone. So let's talk about one of the most important numbers that you're going to need to know about a champion. But here's the catch to this is something that PLARIUM does not actually tell you themselves. You're not going to find this information in-game, and it's very frustrating because of how important this actually is. And this number is going to really help you determine a very important question a lot of the times, which is it worth investing in this champion, or maybe should I work on another champion instead? And, you guys can let me know in the comments, how many times have you built up a champion thinking they were good? You looked at their stats, you looked at their skills, looked good, you built them up, you took them to 6-star, level 60, maybe even invested books, ascended them, and then just realized that they were not that great. They were weak, they were hitting low numbers, and it didn't really add up. Well, this number here, the numbers that you see on the screen, that's going to be the reason why. It's probably because that champion had a really low actual skill multipliers, which is why this is so important, because you can find out this stuff before you actually invest in champions and then realize, you know what, maybe this champion's actually not going to turn out to be that great. So let's go over all of this. I know it can look a bit confusing right now on the screen as you guys see it. Part of this is in Russian as well. Don't worry, you don't need to know anything in Russian to understand what I'm going to say in this video. All the important information is in English. I will, of course, leave links and all that in the description. And a huge shout out to the individuals who helped compile this information, because it did take a good amount of effort, considering PLARIUM does not actually give you this number themselves. And I really, truly do not know the reason why, but they don't, so we have to resort to methods like this in order to find out crucial in-game information. Now, what I wanted to do is focus on some examples here to make this a bit easier to understand, and I'm going to talk about Kale quite a bit because, first of all, I think a lot of people are very familiar with Kale. He is one of the starter rares and one of the most versatile champions in the game. He's great as well. Not just for a rare, he's just an overall great champion. Definitely stacks up to a lot of epics and possibly even legendaries. That is how good he is. And these skill multipliers are going to be one of the reasons why Kale is considered to be really, really good. Because if you took Kale and you had lower skill multipliers, if he didn't hit as hard, he would honestly probably not be considered that good of a rare. He might even be cast aside. But surprisingly, all of the starter champions, all of the starter rares in Raid Shadow Legends all have very solid skill multipliers, especially for their area of attack. You could see here for their second skill, which is their AoE, you have some crazy multipliers, which means you're going to be getting some crazy damage numbers. So let's actually go to the champion index here, because this is going to be what allows you to get most of the information about champions, but definitely not everything. So the important stuff here is, first of all, the rarity. I know that's simple, but it's going to help determine what skill books you need, and obviously lower champion rarities are not going to need as rare skill books, which will be easier to get, but generally lower rare champions also have slightly lower base stats as well, something to keep in mind. You also have the attack type, what they're based off of, but don't just go off of this. A little bit of a side note, but very, very important when it comes to gearing your champions. Even though Kale says he's an attack-based champion, you always want to take a look at these skills themselves, where it says damage based on. This is really the more important one, because you can have champions that say they are attack-based, and then look at the skills and see that they might not actually be attack-based. So always take a look at the skills themselves. You've got the base stats, of course, without any kind of gear or modifiers. Really, really important, because you want to be able to use the champion index to kind of take a champion and compare it to another champion. So if I look at Kale compared to Spirit Host, I could see what Spirit Host's base stats are without any gear or modifiers to kind of see, how they line up. So you've got that. You've got obviously the skills, the cooldowns, the effect of the skill books. A lot of really important information here, but you don't have everything that is going to be crucial to really determine and end up with the answer to the question of how good is this champion, how hard are they going to hit when they are fully built up and fully geared. That is where that skill multiplier comes into effect. So going back to that example that I mentioned earlier about, have you ever built up a champion that looked really good, their skills looked great, and then you spent all those resources, got them, and then started attacking stuff, and you were just seeing really low numbers, and it just didn't really make a lot of sense. Well, let's go with that, and let's take Kale, and let's duplicate him into another champion, alright? So we're going to have two Kales, except one of them is going to be Kale, and one of them is going to be not Kale, right? So one of them, the actual Kale, he's going to hit really, really hard. But then we have our not Kale, who is absolutely identical. His skills are exactly the same. His stats are exactly the same. Absolutely everything about him is exactly the same, except now not Kale is hitting really, really low. And that is because if we were to take a look at our actual multipliers, Kale would have really high skill multipliers right here, and then not Kale would have a really low skill multipliers. That's all it really takes. Like, the difference between this number, if it's really low, even if everything else about a champion looks really, really good, if you end up with a really low skill multiplier, then you're probably going to end up with champions that really do seem underwhelming. So I highly recommend that you guys take a look at this kind of information, especially before you take the resources and invest in a champion. Okay, so some important information about these actual numbers here are, first of all, the starter rares. Now, in many of my videos, I mentioned that the starter rares are all pretty darn good. Even if you take your least favorite starter rare out of the 4, whoever that is, take your pick, they're still probably going to be better than most rares in the game, and that's a combination of their versatile skill kits as well as the fact that their skill multipliers are all pretty darn solid, especially for their AoE skills. You can see here Kale's second ability, which is his AoE, has a multiplier of 4.65, which is really strong, especially for an AoE. You can see that even his AoE multiplier is actually going to be higher than his single target first skill. Now, another important thing is what's actually going on in the third skill here, and that is attacking multiple times. So you'll see that the multiplier looks pretty low, but always take a look at the actual skill, and if you need to get a little bit of a better visualization, you can go back to the actual champion index to see. But this skill right here attacks 4 times at random. So naturally, the skill multiplier is going to be a lot lower because you're actually attacking several times. So if you see a low skill multiplier, like 1.5, you then have to multiply it by the number of times that the skill is actually attacking. So because we are attacking 4 times, the real skill multiplier is more like 6.0. So that's another really, really hard-hitting skill because it attacks so many times. So same thing with Athel or Athel here. You can see that it looks like it's pretty low with 1.3, but if you actually go and take a look at her first skill, it attacks 3 times. So you really kind of have to multiply this 1.3 then again times 3 to get 3.9. So always make sure that you're comparing the actual right amount of damage when it comes to skills that only attack once versus skills that end up attacking multiple times. Okay, so the last thing that I really wanted to talk about before ending this off here, really important, is comparing certain champions to other champions. And it's really important that if you do compare certain champions, that you make sure to stay in their type or their classification, like attack-based champions to other attack-based champions, defense-based champions to other defense-based champions, and HP to other HP champions. And the reason is because the actual stats and multipliers are all going to be different for those 3 different classifications, because generally speaking, attack-based champions are going to have a higher base attack than the defense of defense-based champions. And it makes sense because defense-based champions, you know, they're going to be generally considered better in the mid and late game because not only are you building up their defense for tankiness, but because their skills are going to scale off of defense as well, they're also going to do more damage. So you can focus on one stat, defense, and build up their tankiness and survivability at the same time as also building up their DPS. You don't really have the advantage with attack. You only build up your DPS. They're going to be a lot squishier, so to kind of compensate for that, generally attack-based champions have a bit higher starting attack. Which means that the multipliers are going to be a bit different as well. So keep that in mind, and you know, because defense-based champions start off with a bit lower defense, the multipliers might be, you know, a bit higher or a bit crazier to kind of compensate for that. Now, speaking of crazy though, it's really when we get into HP. So, you know, most of the multipliers, you know, you've got like 3s, 4s, obviously lower with skills that attack multiple times for obvious reasons. Like you've got Cold Heart here, who only has a multiplier of 0.7, but she attacks 4 times on her skill 1, and she also has that heal reduction debuff as well. But it's when you get to HP-based champions where the numbers are going to be pretty crazy. And let's see here, I believe Coffin Smasher is HP-based, right? Yeah, he is. So 0.06 is his multiplier. And that seems really low for his first skill, but obviously it hits 3 times. So second skill is 0.22, which is a bit higher. But the reason why it's like really low compared to attack is, well, it makes sense. I mean, you have a lot more HP on champions compared to attack and defense. So if the multipliers for HP were similar to the multipliers for attack and defense, then you would quite literally see HP-based champions hit 10 times as hard as attack and defense-based champions. So, you know, kind of stay within your champion type, compare HP to HP, attack to attack, defense to defense, until you have a better understanding of, you know, pretty much what I just said right now, or you're just going to give yourself a really big headache. So these are some really interesting numbers to go through. Of course, a major shout out to the individual or individuals who took the time and effort to compile this. Thank you very much. I'll leave a link in the description. You know, if you guys want to take a look at this and kind of explore it on your own, I highly recommend it, especially before you work on investing resources to build certain champions. So thank you guys for watching. I hope that you guys enjoyed and this helped out. And if you did enjoy this video and you want more like this in the future, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate all the support. Feel free to leave a quick like as well. It means more than you can imagine. And more Raid Shadow Legends videos, guides, tutorials, all that fun stuff should be popping up on the screen. Feel free to check them out. But if not, until next time, have a great day, everyone. Take care. This is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.